everyone, and welcome to the Indie Creative Comic Podcast. My name is Angel, as always. Yeah, I just had a brain fart. Oh, and with me is John Pepe.
How's it going, Angel?
Dude, that was probably the worst.
Did you have a stroke? What happened?
You know what? It's throwing me off. It's Monday night. I've been out all day. I've been like losing my voice, just screaming because my daughter just had a tournament today, and they just barely scraped in a win. So, yeah, I'm all over. But
congrats on the win, by the way. That's awesome,
dude. You know what? Sometimes you almost wish they would lose because then it's just all over. You don't have to worry about it.
Now there's the finals, right? You gotta go to the finals now. So.
Now it's the finals. So yeah. So then now I'm gonna have like no nails and no hair at all, because of everything that's going on. But yes, that's the least of our worries today. But yeah, it was good. How you doing? Good?
I'm good, man. Yeah, it's lazy Monday, fall, end of October, Halloween, spooky season.
It's getting dark earlier, and it's staying dark in the morning. It's crazy, and we haven't even got to the back 1 hour at the beginning of November.
And you know who loves longer nighttime?
Werewolves.
There you go.
I absolutely agree.
It's like we rehearsed
that. Yeah, we didn't. All right, so that's a good segue. So, guys, welcome to another episode of the Indie Creative Spotlight. This is where we bring a guest on to, just have a chat about, pick their brain and see what they got going on. This week we have a Mr. Dennis Robinson. We've been talking about him for quite a bit. He's head of Hivehead Studios, and he's got a Kickstarter coming up of his Lycan book, Solomon's Odyssey. I think it's up to chapter number 4. So I say we just pop him on in here. Bam! There he goes.
Hello. Thank you so much for having me on again. It's always good coming on with you guys.
Yeah, it's good as well.
I heard your brain fart at the beginning. Can I tell you a quick side story that relates to that same sort of issue? So this past weekend, I was doing a Comic-Con. It was a horror con in Richmond, Virginia. And so to give you a little bit of backstory, I'm doing 27 shows this year on top of my full-time job. So to say that I told you I don't burn the candle at both ends, I just toss it right into the dumpster fire. So what ends up happening a lot of times at shows, people will come up to me and they'll remember me, but I can't remember people so well anymore. I can remember faces pretty well, though that's getting worse the more shows that I do, but names I'm terrible with. And so we're at this show, and I have some vendor friends next to me, so they know this story too. And at one point, this gentleman comes by in a wheelchair, and he's like, "Hey, Dennis, it's so good to see you, man. It's been a couple months, right?" And I'm like, "Yep, yes, it has. How have you been?" And he's just like, "Oh, busy. We were talking about it last time I saw you." I was like, "Yeah, no, I remember. Yeah, he's super busy." And like, what I'll do if I can't remember somebody is I'll just lie and pretend and just kind of keep going and try to improv my way through it. And so that conversation went on for a while. He's like, "All right, well, I'm down here on the end, so I'll see you later." I was like, "Yep, see you later." He goes away. I turn to my friends. I'm like, I don't have not even the slightest clue who that was. Not even like a facial recognition, nothing.
Wow.
Not even 5 minutes later, another person comes around the same way. Goes, "Dennis, oh, I haven't seen you since Horror on Main, I think it was." So I was like, "Oh, yeah, you're right. Yeah." Nothing again. Absolutely nothing. I turned to my friends. I'm like, again, nothing. And then the end of the show happens, and another vendor friend of mine walks by, and she goes, "Hey, did you like those 2 people that came by and pretended like they knew you? Because they didn't." And so that was a vendor that had vended next to me, and I had told her, if someone comes by and says that they know me and I have no recollection, I will just roll with it. And so she played into that and then told her dad and brother to just come over and mess with me. And I was like, you got me. Absolutely
that is
got me.
Fantastic. It's funny because I'm horrible with names. I'm much better with faces, and I try these mnemonic things. So if I see somebody for the first time, I try to associate, their name with whatever and the fact that you couldn't remember somebody who was in a wheelchair out of all the people that you've met in the shows, I was a little concerned there for a moment, but I'm glad it was a joke.
Well, it's funny because there was somebody at the show who was in a wheelchair, but I do remember them because they came up to a previous show, and we had talked every day for 3 days. And then I specifically remember them because the dad I thought was really cool until the third day when he had a Cowboys jersey on. Then I was like,
oh, there you go.
Down a few pegs. And so we joked about that. So I remember those guys. But yeah.
It is a remarkable skill for people to have, especially if you do meet a lot of people. And again, yeah, you go to almost any con that you're able to hit, you go to. I've noticed this. But yeah, it's an incredible skill to, Kevin Smith does this really well. You meet Kevin Smith once, you meet him again, he will, whether it's, and it is so convincing, it feels legit, but whether he is just rolling with it or he actually does catalog, which is insane if he catalogs all these encounters, but he has that way of making you feel like he does remember the last time he saw you. It's a very cool skill for people to have.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Me, I just use my D&D skills to improv my way through the lie. So
there you go.
Sometimes I do remember, sometimes, and a lot of other times I don't.
Yeah.
There's just too many people.
So now you're at the end of the year. You're still doing 27 shows, or you're at 27 shows, or
so 27 will be the end. I got 4 more left to go. 3 straight in November. So I get about a two-week break right now. And then I got 3 straight in November, and they're all over the place too. Cause I live in Gettysburg, Pennsylvania, which is like dead center of the bottom of the state. Mm-hmm. And then I'm going to Scranton, Pennsylvania for a 3-day horror con.
Nice
and
drive.
Then Grand Rapids, Michigan the next weekend.
That's a nice
and
drive.
Then back to Philly the weekend after that.
That's a nice drive. Wow.
Yeah.
Woo.
Yeah.
So wait. So before we get into it, because I have that 27 is tremendous.
Yeah, I don't recommend it. Don't recommend it at all.
Like, why? What made you think 27 was a good number?
And
yeah, is that what it is?
I think it was our advice. I think it was our advice last time. It's like, hit as many shows as you can.
That's
son.
Right. So it's a combo of a few things. So last year I had done a lot of shows because I had gone through a breakup, so I was just looking to fill time basically, and also get the word out about the book and whatnot. And then this year I kind of just re-upped shows, but also because I make vendor friends, they talk me into other shows. They're like, oh, we're going to this show. You should go to that show too. And so I end up getting signed up for a lot more shows than I would like. Next year, I'm trying to cut it down to like 15.
15.
And so I keep a spreadsheet of how the shows do in terms of, the amount of money made per day and like what items sell and whatnot. And so I'm like, okay, there's going to be like a threshold. And if we don't hit that threshold, we're just going to chop that and then maybe try some different shows. Cause I'd like to try like the World Oddities Expo. I've been hearing good things about those shows. So I want to check those out. And I found a new show in the last couple of years called Grimoire Academy's Gothic Markets.
Okay.
They're fantastic. Like they fill those rooms up and there's no celebrities or anything like that. So people are just there to shop. So everybody does really well at those shows. So I'm going to try and do a few more of those, which means probably a little bit more driving than I'm usually
I don't know if we spoke about this last time, but did you do the IC3?
No.
The Indie Creator Comic Con?
No, where's that at?
They're based out of, I want to say Massachusetts. And it's strictly an independent Comic Con. So there's no big names there and stuff like that. This is just, creator-owned vendors that come in, and they were. I think this was their second year. They're going into their third year next year, and each show gets bigger and bigger.
That's
more
cool.
people. There's a ton of traffic there.
My secret to doing shows is that I usually only, like 99% of the time, will only do shows where I know someone who lives in the vicinity, so I can crash on a couch or a floor or something. So just to avoid the hotel costs, because that helps out a lot, especially when you're first starting out. Because my first year of doing cons, which was like just 3 months at the end of the year, I was doing the hotel thing, and oh boy, did that just really, you just never got out of the hole. And then since then, it makes it a lot easier to sort of do decently at shows if you don't have to worry about it, $400-500 bill or something like that.
All right. Well, you heard it, guys. So if you live in the Massachusetts area, hit Dennis up. Make some friends.
Never been to Massachusetts, actually. Never been.
Nice up there. Oh, the whole New England area, especially if you love seafood, great.
Oh yeah.
If you like the cold, even better. Especially now that it's going to be. But I think the show's in March, so it's not bad up there. The only thing that I will say, I'm trying to think if it's in the actual Boston area. that whole area just sucks driving in because the traffic is horrible. And then on top of that, the road is so tiny because that state is like from like the 1300s.
And it's a circle.
Oh, okay.
New York is
I drive
easy.
a truck now, so
New York is easy because it's a grid.
Yeah.
Like Boston area, it sucks. It's a circle. It sucks.
So it's easy to get lost.
But if you're ever honestly like a great place to go though, if you're ever in Massachusetts and you're near this town, is Salem, Massachusetts is great.
Yeah.
One half witches and monsters and the other half pirates and ships and stuff like that. It's very cool. Very. And now, so when you're going to shows, I know it's really hard to kind of get a sense of the city of the town that you're in. But do you ever make a point to stop at local comic shops while you're in these towns of the shows, or do you think you're going to cover that ground at the show?
Well, so it's hard to do that because a lot of times the hours of a comic shop are the same hours as the show.
Yeah.
So it's really hard to, because I'm by myself at shows, so I can't really like sneak away most of the time. And I don't usually get there a day early or leave a day late because I still have my, normal Monday through Friday job to work as well. So it's kind of, I use what I can when I can. A lot of time, well, not a lot of times, but, a few times at shows, I'll have people who run local shops, meander around, and sometimes we'll get to talking and stuff like that. It doesn't happen super, super often, but I have had that happen before. But no, typically, I've tried to go to local shops. It's just, it always seems that the store hours are almost identical to the show hours, so it just makes it kind of hard to do it that way.
Yeah. Now, did you go to any show that this year, and you don't no names of shows or anything like that that you found as an absolute waste of time?
Oh yeah, I'll give it to you. Battlefield Bash here in my hometown.
Really?
Oh god, it was so bad. So I literally put out like a little social media post because I do like a little Patreon podcast, and the clip I used is about this exact topic. So Battlefield Bash was recommended to me at my other local show, which is way better. It's called Creature Feature Weekend. That's an amazing like horror show. It's fantastic if anybody's ever around in Gettysburg at the end of March. But so I was told about Battlefield Bash. It was $150 table, which is super reasonable for an 8-foot table. And it was in July, which typically there's not a ton of shows going on in within a reasonable distance in July anyway. So my schedule was open. And so I signed up, and then my social media person was like, Dennis, I'm trying to make the post saying you're going to the show. I can't figure out what the hell this show's about. And so I went to their Facebook, and I had to dig for a while to figure it out because there's lots of AI images of Lincoln, like Abraham Lincoln.
Right.
And like some of them, he has Santa hats, and some of them there's like ghosts, and it'll say Christmas in July on some of the ads. And as it turns out, it's a paranormal convention.
Okay.
But in the same like building across the street was also a show called Christmas in July that Battlefield Bash didn't even know was happening.
Oh my goodness.
So it was a nightmare, that part anyways. But then when you get in, there was the kiss of death, as I like to call it, with shows. So for people who do a lot of conventions, if you get stuck in a room that's not the main room, like off the beaten path, good luck, because unless the show comes up with a good way for people to go to your room, no one's going to go to that room. And that's what happened. The signage about the other room was if you went all the way through the room and out the back into the hallway, there was a sign that said, hey, there's another room. So it was dead. I think, and so I've made table cost since February of 2023, whenever the Eagles lost the Super Bowl. That was the last time that I didn't make my table cost. It was a bad weekend all around, I guess. And so this time Sunday rolled around and I was $146 out of $150. And I was like, I'm going to miss the table by $5 because of this stupid show, because no one's there. 30 vendors had left between Saturday to Sunday. So it was just empty. And eventually one guy who had made the rounds quite a few times was talking to me, and I was like, yeah, I'm $5 per table. He took pity and bought a $5 item on my table. So I was $1 over
Oh
table
my
cost.
goodness. That's crazy.
Yeah, that show, total waste of time.
Wow.
Like not great.
Now, was there a different cost for tables that were on the main floor?
No, they were all, I think it would be a different cost if you got like more than one table.
Right.
But no, it seemed like it was pretty random how they had you situated, because the main room had all the celebrities, which were
Right.
like paranormal investigators and psychics and stuff like that. And the rest of it were vendors. Our room didn't have any celebrities. It was just vendors only. So there wasn't really any reason for anybody to come up that way.
Yeah. Sometimes, it just works out
That's
that
the
way.
trial and error thing of,
Yeah, I've done a
doing
couple of
shows, you never
shows where when there's multiple rooms and they're not
Mhm.
advertised, or you don't have a map or a layout, it makes it really difficult, especially if foot traffic doesn't flow naturally through the rooms and you have to just work your way back out. It sucks. And the only thing that's really good about this time is there are a ton of shows.
Oh,
And I
too
think it
many,
really,
I would say.
yeah. But now you can pick and choose, and I think because you've done this absurd amount of shows in a year, you have some data though that you can pluck from, which is,
Yeah.
you obviously networked, number one.
Yep.
2, you probably saw a ton of people. And then 3, now you can actually go back and check off, okay, hey, the show is pretty good. Let me make the next round because you've got more content coming out. So
yeah, like I said, I keep a spreadsheet. I track how much of each item sells, and like it takes out the table cost, so I can see like the profit at the end of the day, all that stuff. So that helps to sort of narrow down, like, okay, this show was fine, but then you look at how much money you made and you're like, well, that show was 2 days, I made like $200 profit. It's like, or I could try and find another show on a different weekend and possibly make, a little bit more money. It just depends.
And oh, go ahead.
No, you're good. You're good.
What do you prefer? Do you prefer like a good mid-level show? How big have you gone? Have you done New York Comic Con?
Oh God, no.
No, yeah. Or do you prefer sort of like a smaller local, like PBA, Firehouse type show?
It depends. So the biggest show that I do, but not as a vendor, is Dragon Con.
Mm-hmm.
I've been real tempted to vend that show, but I typically work by myself. And I feel like, as somebody who's been attending that show since 2018, there's no human way that you can do that show by yourself. I know people who do it. I just don't know how I would do it. And then also do panels, because I do live shows and stuff like that at Dragon Con. So it's like I would be vending from 10 a.m. till 8 p.m. and then have my drunken D&D comedy podcast at 10 p.m. until like 1 in the morning, and then have to be up again the next day. So that's what's always been keeping me from doing that. But like my best show is probably MagFest. That show is absolute insanity. Do you guys know about that show?
Where's this?
So it's in Washington, D.C.
Okay.
It's at the harbor, so it's not in downtown.
Right.
But it's the music and gaming festival. So it's all about video games and video game music, stuff like that. First year I went, it's in January, so there's nothing else going on, which is fantastic. So you go, I'm about to get to this show, and I see that the show is Thursday through Sunday, which is the longest show I had done at that point. And it says it opens at 2 on Thursday and closes Sunday at 4. So I said to the person, I was like, cool, but like what are the vendor hours? She goes, Thursday at 2 until Sunday at 4. And I said, yeah, but when does the room close? She goes, it doesn't. The vendor room never closes. It runs 24 hours.
Whoa.
From open until close. Like anybody can go anywhere. So
It's
you
a
just have to be at your
marathon.
table. Yeah. So you just have to be at your table for 8 hours a day. That's the minimum. But like some people work in shifts, because you will get the drunkies that wander through at 3 a.m. and just throw money at anything.
That's genius.
And unfortunately, like I said, I work by myself. I stay with a friend like right across the bridge, so it's super easy to get in and out. But like I usually work that show like 10 a.m. till midnight.
Wow.
And that's my best show by far. This year, it more than tripled my best record. Now, to be fair, I've also been expanding the table in the last year and a half, 2 years. I started doing nerdy little landscape paintings in the style of Bob Ross.
Okay.
Because the Venn diagram for people who are into werewolf comics is a bit limited. So I wanted to be able to hit some more generic stuff as well, just to help, recoup costs because I pay for the whole comic thing out of my own pocket anyway.
Right,
So
right.
any money I can make would be great. And so I watch Bob Ross to go to sleep. And one day I was at Heroes Con down in North Carolina. And I said, I never see, everybody loves Bob Ross, but I never see anybody doing like fan art in a Bob Ross style. So I bought a Bob Ross art kit because he literally sells like a paint like Bob Ross kit where he teaches you how to paint like him. And it's got a lot of tools that you need in it and all that jazz. And so I did a few of the practice paintings, and then I started doing actual landscapes from video games and movies and whatnot. And so I'm always making new ones. And when I go to shows, I'll have prints, and now I have stickers, and those things sell like crazy. I mean, MagFest, I sold 140 of those prints, just the painting prints. And I didn't even have stickers yet at that point. So that I like that big show because it is also different. The moment you walk into that show, you just hear live music like everywhere.
Right.
And it's 25,000 people. So it's a big show, and it's 25,000 people every single day, except for Sunday. They start leaving on Sunday, but normally Saturday's your busy day and the other days are kind of slow out of MagFest. It's 25,000 from the start. And it's just, as you said, a marathon for 3 straight days. I prefer, it doesn't matter if it's a small show or a big show. I just prefer to be busy, because if I'm not busy and there's nobody there, there's nobody to talk to or anything like that, the days just take forever to get through.
Now, is there an artist alley section in that show, or is it just like mixed vendors everywhere?
So MagFest, there is no artist alley section because the vendor hall is actually pretty small. And to get into MagFest is an interesting experience. They give you 30 minutes to apply. They'll tell you, let's just say May 30th at 8:30 p.m. the application's open. You have 30 minutes to apply. You miss that window, you don't get in. But even if you do get in the window, they then have a jury who go through every single applicant's work, because they don't want everybody to have the same stuff, because they only have like 100 or 200 vendor spots. So they want to make sure that there is a nice mix, which is great for the vendors, because then you don't have a lot of competition, in terms of total vendors, but also there aren't really a whole lot of people selling the same thing that you're selling.
Right.
And I think that's why I keep getting in, is because my stuff is so eclectic. Like I'm doing werewolf comics and Bob Ross style landscape paintings. Like you just not, I don't know anybody else who's doing that combo. So,
and then after the jury selection, there's the obstacle course.
Exactly.
The time trial obstacle course.
Yes.
To get the team.
Yes.
That's wild. That's kind of neat though, that because then again, like you said, it kind of makes you stand out in the crowd. It makes every vendor sort of stand out in the crowd. You don't have repeat vending and competing. And I think it's a really good idea. I really like that you don't only do comic conventions as well. Seems like you mix it a lot, like the Paranormal conventions. The MagFest. Do you do have you ever
If I can be honest with you, my favorite kind of shows are horror shows, just because they're so different. Like when you go to a Comic-Con, all the vendor stuff just kind of looks similar. Like everyone's doing prints of Spider-Man, Batman, Superman, that sort of thing. Horror shows, you have no idea what you're going to see. I've been to horror shows where there's 2 snake vendors and like you just have no idea. It's like all crazy. There was an artist I saw at a show this year. All of his art was made out of bones.
Nice.
Like you just have no idea what you're going to see, and you'll just see all kinds of crazy creative stuff. So I dig horror shows from that aspect at the very least.
I like the horror show, and I also like the sort of the mix of like the horror / general nostalgia convention.
Yeah.
So like there's Chiller. I don't know. You're in Gettysburg.
I've heard of Chiller.
You've heard of Chiller. Yeah, that's going to be next weekend. That's the last weekend of April and the last weekend of October.
Okay.
I definitely think you should look into it. I think you do really well there because again, you have the 2 unique things, and that will make you stand out. The Bob Ross fantasy landscape stuff, but also again the book that we're here to talk about also is the historically focused werewolf tale, which I think is such a great hook. And I think you do well. I think you do well there.
Yeah, like I have a number of vendor friends who do that show. It's called, isn't it? It's a Chiller Theater or something
Chiller
like that.
Theater Expo, yeah. So it's
Chiller
an
Theater.
offshoot of the old. Zachary was like a horror movie host in the in this area, in the Pennsylvania Philly area, and there was Chiller Theater was like a weekly horror show. You know, they would play the old movies, and when that went away, it still had a devoted following. So 35 years or so ago, they started doing the Chiller Theater Expo. It started out as a true horror theme, you know, retro nostalgia horror, and now it opens it up so you actually have, old sitcom stars like the guys from What's Happening were there recently, or Perfect Strangers and things like that. Like Huey Lewis is going to be there, not just as Huey Lewis, but as part of a Back to the Future reunion.
Oh, awesome!
So like they'll have a few other cast members from Back to the Future there. Like
that's
so
cool.
that's sort of the type of show it is. It's that mashup, that horror theme but nostalgia theme convention.
It's been on my list of ones to try. It just always ends up falling on the same weekend as something else that I had already booked. And for instance, like the one that's coming up right now, then I would have had 28 shows. So like, I was like, I'm already filled up for the year. I don't want to do any more shows.
Well, that's what, that's
27 is the right number. 28 is just insane.
That's excessive. Yeah, that's you're out of your mind at 28.
It's excessive. Yeah. 28 weeks out of the year. God damn.
Well, that's what's nice about Chiller, though. You have the two options because it is, April and October. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, there's a couple like that, but there's plenty of shows. You could do a show every single freaking week and be out 52 weeks.
Yeah, why are you not doing 52 shows a year?
Yeah,
53 on a leap year.
Or sleep. Who needs these things? Well, so like this past weekend, I was at the GalaxyCon's Nightmare Weekend times Animate because they smushed the two together for some reason. And that same weekend in Richmond, Virginia, apparently is the biggest East Coast tattoo convention, was also in Richmond. Then Baltimore Comic-Con was also the same weekend. There was a horror con in Lexington, Kentucky. So it's just like there was a ton of stuff. Plus the protests were all on Saturday too. On Saturday there was just a million things going on.
I've done that. Baltimore is pretty big.
Yeah, I used to go to Baltimore. I haven't been for a few years because it always ends up falling on the same weekend. Like I said before, as something else. And from what I've heard from my vendor friends who've been vending for longer, before 2020, it felt very similar where there was just a ton of conventions and they were all kind of eating off of each other. And then COVID hit and a lot of them died.
Yeah.
And then when things started opening back up, there was only a few conventions. So like everybody did really well. And now that that's passed, it's all starting to ramp back up again, where there's just so many conventions all at the same time all over the place.
Yeah. That's crazy. But it's really important to do, I think, especially for somebody who is, doing this on their own.
Just if for nothing else but networking, I say, like, because I always say one of the most important things you can do as an indie creator, especially if you're just getting started, is networking. My books wouldn't even exist at all if not for networking. When I was down at Dragon Con, because I've been going to that since 2017. And so that's literally how everything on the book got started, was networking through Dragon Con.
Nice. All right. Yeah. All right. So then let's talk about the book. So let's I guess go back to the beginning now, and just kind of remind the audience of who you are, and what you've been working on, and what's coming out shortly.
Sure. So my name is Dennis Robinson, and or otherwise known on the internet as the world's most okayest DM. And I run Hivehead Studios, which is just my own little umbrella that I use, at least for now anyways, for just the Lycan Solomon's Odyssey series, which is the story of the world's first werewolf. So it's like a little horror, a little mythology, a little adventure, a little history. The first book in the series kind of sets everything in motion. It's the origin story. And then every book in the series after that, it's the same character, but he's interacting with different regional monsters and mythologies and gods and stuff like that. So the second book goes into ancient Arabic mythology and folklore. The third book I describe as H.P. Lovecraft meets Gilgamesh. And then this book that's about to launch on Kickstarter, that one's set in ancient Egypt. So you got ancient Egyptian gods, and we also talk about some, eldritch beings and whatnot as well.
Nice. All right. So now you're writer on the book, correct?
Yes. So I'm the writer creator.
As well?
No, there's not enough time in the universe. How would I get 27 shows and have a full-time job and do the book? It would take me a decade to do a book, and then I'd be dead long before the series ever even got like a quarter of the way through what I plan on doing.
Yes. So who's your creative team?
So my main artist is Sal Denaire. He's a fantastic artist. He's out of Spain. I met him through a Facebook group called, I think it's Connecting Writers and Artists. And he's fantastic. And my colorist, his name is Ezekiel Dominguez. He's out of Argentina, and he works through Stone Tower Comics. And then my letterer is Joel Saavedra, who's also out of Argentina, but I met him through my first editor on the book that I used to have. And I've just kept him with me ever since. I just love what he does and how he explained what his, not style necessarily, but the plan he has when he does lettering. Because I consider lettering to be an art form, but I never thought it to be that intricate until he explained to me how he plans out the pages. And then I was like, wow, there's actually like a ton to it that I never even realized before. And then I have an editor. Her name is Stephanie Cragnola. That's a fellow podcaster of mine from Austin, Texas. And then my cover artists typically are Christian Nabari. He's usually my main cover artist. I forget where he's out of, but I know he's in the US. Matthew Sutton, who's out of Georgia now. And then recently I've gotten Maria Wolf, who's fantastic. I absolutely love her work. I think she's out of Chicago too.
Oh, so you got nobody in your region.
Not at all.
That is phenomenal.
Not at all.
I love that. And just because we're in this day and age now where, the world is actually accessible to us and the resources all over. And you keep expanding, which is pretty cool. How have you found, how do you choose who does what when it comes to a cover? Is it just based off of availability, or you like someone's sensibility or think they can do what you need them to do at any given time?
So the first cover artist, Christian Nabari, I found him through a friend who knows way too many people in the comic industry. And she was doing a lot of shows with Jim Starlin. She was touring around with him. And so she would walk around shows, and she saw this guy who had this awesome horror art, and he had a werewolf print as well. And so she sent me his information, and I looked through his portfolio. I reached out, and he's great. And so he did a cut. We talked through a cover together, and usually what ends up happening is I'll give some basic ideas of what the premise of the book is, and then he'll give me like various sketches that he think might be cool. And then I'll pick one of them to go with, and then he'll just do it the rest of the way. And then Matthew Sutton is somebody that I met through Dragon Con, my other project, Botched, a D&D podcast. We go to Dragon Con every year. We do a live show in front of about 300 drunk people. It's fantastic because we get drunk while we're also doing it. Give free beer to everybody too, so we probably kind of exacerbate things.
Nice.
And we used to do, one of our Patreon levels was we would hire artists to do art from the podcast because it's weird, creepy, and crazy and all this other stuff. And so I would go to Dragon Con and I would talk to various artists that I thought their art was pretty cool. And I'd pitch them on doing like commissions and whatnot. And he was one of the people that was doing commission work. And I always loved his style anyways. And I know he's done cover art for DC and Marvel as well. So I reached out and said, hey, I know you do art for Botched and whatnot. Can I get you to do a cover for Lycan? And he's done a cover for the second book, the third book, and the fourth book now. And then Maria Wolf, I was doing Baltimore Comic-Con, and one of my other friends who runs New Dimension Comics out in Pittsburgh knew Maria Wolf and sort of like introduced us. And he was like, yeah, she loves werewolf stuff. So literally, if you just show her your books, she'll probably just say yes immediately. And sure enough, showed her my comics, and she's like, yes, I will. I will do a cover. And it was my favorite cover for the third book. And I haven't seen what she's done just yet for the fourth book. I'm still waiting for the cover to come out. But everything else she does is amazing. So I can't imagine that I won't be absolutely blown away.
Oh, that's
awesome. That's how I found everybody.
So then you have multiple covers for each of the books?
Yes. Yep. The first one only had 2 covers. Both of them were done by Christian Nabari. The second book had 3 covers, 1 by Christian, 2 by Matt. Third one had 3 covers, 1 by Christian, 1 by Matt, 1 by Maria. And the fourth book was supposed to have 3, but because I was unsure of if I was going to have one of the covers, I wasn't able to get a hold of Maria Wolf, so I was worried I wouldn't get it in time. So I had contacted another artist friend of mine, J.M. DeSantis, and so now he has done a cover too. So the fourth book will have 4 covers. So
nice.
I don't want to make that a pattern of every chapter number also is the number of covers. I don't really want to do that.
All right. So then talking about that, because this is chapter 4 coming out, correct?
Yes. Yep.
All right. So we know that we have a Kickstarter coming out that we'll talk about that. So how many chapters, do you know how many chapters in total you're looking at? Like where the end of this story ends?
15.
Or is this at 15? Is it really?
Yeah. Yep, I know what happens on the last page of the last book already. I have a rough idea of what each book is going to be, like each chapter. Right. But like I already know how the story ends and all that stuff. So yeah, I have it all planned out.
Oh, that's awesome. So is it completely written out, or you know where you need to go?
It's not all completely written out yet. The 5th book had, so when I first started this journey back in 2017, 2018, I didn't know how to write a comic script. So I wrote this weird mutant version of a book / comic script because I didn't know what I was doing. And the idea was basically just to get an idea on paper, give it to some friends and get their feedback. And so when you open the book and you see executive producer, those are all my friends who read the very first version of the book and gave me feedback on it. And so I did the first 5 chapters in that sort of style. So the 5th book was written that way. Now that the 4th book is in production, I'm starting to go in and actually write it like it ought to be written. So I have the outline done, and it's a lot longer than all the other books, which makes me happy and sad at the same time. But the other chapters aren't like laid out yet or written or anything like that. It's just sort of ideas in my head. Like I know this is what I want story beat wise and whatnot.
So you don't have a set page count either in your head?
No, so when I do the outline, it's like, okay, here's what I want for so when I do an outline, it's this happens, like a 1-sentence description of this is what's happening in this section. And it's like page number this to page number that. And I'll do that through the whole book until I have the story that I want to tell. I'll usually then give it to my editor and she'll tell me if, something makes sense or doesn't make sense, or if we should expand something or get rid of something. And usually the outline that I make is off by a couple of pages in the wrong direction, meaning I end up adding even more pages. So the first book and the second book are both 72 pages. I think it's 60 pages of story with like 12 pages of extras.
Right.
The third book was 96 pages. It was 90 pages of story with 6 pages of extras. The 4th book is 107 pages of story with 1 page of extras. And as it currently stands, the 5th book outline is sitting at 151 pages of story.
Oh my goodness.
It's 1 page of extras, which means it'll probably be closer to 160 by the time I'm done with it.
Wow. So then we're not even going to be able to do one collection. It's going to be like a set of 3 compendiums?
Well, so the idea that I had in my head, so the whole story is 3 5-chapter arcs. So I was thinking at the end of the 5 chapters, I could release like a big thick version, which would be 480 pages.
Okay. That's about
could do.
Yeah.
I did, out of curiosity, punch it into Print Ninja is what I use to print. Right. And I looked at how much it would cost for the number of copies that I typically order, and about fell out of my chair. So that was fun.
Well, you do it also in color. So that's,
yeah,
you're paying a hefty price for that.
Yeah.
So
there might need to be another Kickstarter just for that book.
That makes sense. All right. So how are you finding the Kickstarter journey? Because now you're on your 4th Kickstarter, correct?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
So from beginning of Kickstarter, obviously we know a lot less than probably what you know now. How has the process changed for you, if at any?
So for me, when I approach Kickstarters today the same way that I approached them for the first one, which is I'm always paranoid that I don't know enough. So I start doing research and planning like a year in advance. And that's a pretty good amount of time to like start to get stuff on paper and plan things out and things like that. And one of the things I like to do is I'll go and look at other Kickstarters and sort of look for ideas or something interesting. And then that might give me an idea for something else. like a reward or stretch goal, something like that. Like Brian Polito's Coffin Comics gives me a lot of ideas for stretch goals, because that's one thing I'm like, what do you even put in for stretch goals? And he always has a ton of them because he raises a bunch of money. So it's like, okay, these are good ideas as far as stretch goals go. So I can, do something similar as a lot of these things. I still do that. I still do like a year's worth of research and planning. I make a spreadsheet where I'll write out items. I'll figure out what the cost of those items would be, and then what would be like a fair price to charge for them, things like that. And sometimes throughout the year of planning, I'll make items, I'll figure that out, and then I'll realize that's a terrible idea. Don't do that. But I will say that usually each Kickstarter, I learn a lesson as to what not to do for each time. So the first one of my stretch goals was a hat, which is a terrible idea to do for a stretch goal, because you're just going to lose so much money, because a stretch goal is just a free item that everybody who backs physically gets. So like a lot of people got hats. I think the first Kickstarter had like 180 backers, and it wasn't all 180 people, because it was a lot of digital backers, but still it was more hats than I would care to remember. So that ate up a lot more money than I would like. So it's like, okay, stretch goals should be something that does not have a high cost to it, so it doesn't screw you up. But then in the second one, and I always do a t-shirt, in the second book, I was like, oh, we'll do a glow in the dark t-shirt. And the company that quoted me what it would cost, when I actually went to buy the shirts, that is not what was quoted. So I ended up losing $5 for every time somebody backed at the t-shirt level, or every time somebody bought a t-shirt.
Right.
So I learned, okay, can't trust that. Gonna, don't even bother with glow in the dark. It's cool, but we'll just do something different instead.
Right.
So those are like sort of the lessons that I've been learning throughout. The lesson from the last time to this time that I thought I had learned, but it's still biting me in the butt, is give the artists enough time to get the stuff done. And even then, there's usually at least one or two pieces that I'm waiting on, like literally the day before the Kickstarter is supposed to go live. So there's a chance, even this time, I may have to delay the start date by a day or two, because I want to do November 1st. But if I don't have all the items that I need, I'm not going to do the launch until I have everything ready, because I don't think you can really mess with the reward levels after it goes live. So once it goes up, it's kind of, you can mess with the main page text, but you can't mess with the reward goals. So
when you talk about are you talking about the book being complete, or certain like reward items?
Book's not going to be complete.
It's not.
It's I just got page 38 in today out of 108. So I wanted to do a Kickstarter every year, because it'll just help offset the enormous amount of cost. Because like I said, I pay for everything out of my own pocket. The Kickstarters aren't there to make all my money back. That's just not going to happen, probably. So like, for instance, the fourth book's probably going to cost me somewhere in the ballpark of $35,000 once it's all said and done. I set the goal at the Kickstarter at $10,000. So my goal is not to make all the money back. It's just to get a little bit back, just so that way I don't go broke while making the rest of the book.
So that money should cover the cost of the books and the rewards.
Yes, it'll cover the cost of the printing. It'll cover the cost of the shipping. It'll cover the cost of some of the art, things like that. And depending and every Kickstarter has gotten a little bigger each year. So, we'll see. But also, because I keep making the books longer, the costs go up a little bit each time as well.
Yeah. And then, so obviously everything else is coming out of pocket. So the artist, letterer.
Yep.
Wow.
Yeah. Wow. Everything comes out of pocket.
And it's really important for people to understand it, because if you're a one-man team, it's different. You're writing, you're drawing, you're doing the lettering, all that stuff. So obviously you're paying yourself, or it's just your time.
Yeah.
But when you have a team of people, because I've been on your website and I've seen a team of people, it's an investment. So let me go back even further. Why and where did the idea of Lycan come from?
So I've always had a fascination with werewolves since I was a little kid. They used to stick us in the library in elementary school, probably for the teachers to just get us out of their hair. But they would just throw us in there and be like, occupy yourselves for like an hour. And I was meandering around one day, and I found this purple book with orange embellishments and trim and things like that. And it was a picture book, Lon Chaney's The Wolfman, the original Wolfman. And I'd never seen a werewolf. I'd never heard of a werewolf. I was just looking at the pictures and I was fascinated. And ever since then, I've had a fascination with characters with some sort of duality, like the Incredible Hulk or Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde, like things like two characters sort of residing in the same body, that kind of a thing. So that's what got me into werewolves. And then when I started doing the D&D podcast and I started playing God of War, I got really into mythology. First Greek mythology, which is probably why book 5 is the longest because it's set in ancient Greece. That's what got me into Greek mythology. And when I started doing D&D, I became a DM, building these worlds and things like that. I always thought it would be a neat idea to tell the origin story of the world's first werewolf, because you don't really ever get it. There's little, some people think it's like King Lycaon from ancient Greece, or it's Saint Christopher. Like there's no set in stone, this is the first werewolf like there is with vampires. It's not Count Dracula. I can't remember the character's name, or the person's name, I should say, but there's in history, this is the first. They don't really have that so much for werewolves. So I wanted to do sort of my own story while also being able to play around in the sandbox that is mythology, because there's so much awesome mythology around. So that's sort of how everything kind of came together, at least the idea in my head. And I first started writing down ideas back in 2009 on, I may still have the paper somewhere rolled up, but it was like just yellow note paper while I was at Disney World. I didn't feel like going to the water park. So I was just writing down all these ideas for werewolves versus samurai and all kinds of other stuff, and just playing around with different mythological periods, and just, it'd be really cool if a werewolf was here at this time, and if a werewolf was here at this time, that kind of a thing.
Okay, so then now we have your fascination with werewolves, your discovery of werewolves. Why this medium?
So when I read books, which isn't often anymore because I don't have any time, but when I'm reading a book, I tend to start to imagine, I'll start to picture in my head whatever is being depicted on the page. And so I'll get a visual in my head of what the thing looks like. And I feel like that's the same for most people. They'll start to visualize in their head, and most people, it will not look the same. And when I was doing the book idea, I had a vision in my head, and I wanted other people to see it the same way that I saw it. And I feel like the perfect way to do that is a comic book, because you're basically forcing them to see it the way that it's in your head, because there's the picture. And I'm a visual person anyways. I mean, we've already talked about, I do Bob Ross paintings and stuff like that. So I'm just a visual guy at heart anyways. I've always had a big love for art. So it just felt like the most sensible idea for me anyways, in terms of, I want to tell this story, but I also want it to be gorgeous. And I just want to, hit the best of both worlds.
Right.
And so that's how it kind of became that medium instead of a different medium. And it's funny because one of the vendor I was talking about, who was giving me crap for not being able to remember people's names of the show, he and I are actually working on turning Lycan into a regular book as well. So he's going to take my comics, and then we're going to rewrite them in a book format as well. So then it'll be in two different, a novelization.
Very cool. Actually, I have a question about your script writing. So as a visual artist yourself, when you're writing, and you said you do want the page to sort of reflect as close as possible what is in your head. So you're writing full detailed scripts for the artists. Yeah, you're not doing Marvel method. You're full detailed. You're laying out the shots and the angles. And is that does the artist respond well to that? I mean, you guys have to know going in, right, that the artist is going to want.
So I have another artist friend who he does a vampire wrestler book. It's not out yet, so I don't know what the title is just yet. But he says that his writer just says, hey, I kind of want this to happen on this page. He just says that. Gives him a one sentence, this happens on the page. And that's all he has to go off of. Mine are the exact opposite. Panel 1, this is the time of the day. This is where the sun is. This is where the characters are. This is where the camera is. What's the angle of the camera? Who's the camera facing at? This is the emotion that each of the cameras are facing. This is the motion that's going on the page. I am as descriptive as you can get, because I figured that's probably more useful to the artist to have more to go off of. And my artist, for the most part, will draw it the way that I write it. But the one thing that I do like about working with Sal is if he thinks there's a better way to visually show a panel or a page in general, he will sketch that out and show it to me. And most times I'll say, yes, I like that even better. Like he took what I had and then he turned it up to 11 kind of a thing. Nice. There's been a few times where I've pushed back. It's not very often. And that's mostly because of the language barrier. Like he's not like there's a weird word that I'll like, for instance, in the third book, Gilgamesh, I said that he's wall running, and he had no idea what I was talking about. He sketched it out a bunch of different ways. It's like, no, that's not wall running.
Gotta see
like,
parkour.
I was like, parkour, Prince of Persia, and he just wasn't getting it. So I usually will get reference images and show him, or I'll sketch it out real rough myself. And he's like, oh, okay, that makes total sense. And okay, great. And then, go from there. So I think it's a pretty good partnership in terms of the art, in terms of, I give a lot of detail, which is helpful to them, I think, but also he has enough freedom that if he has a creative idea that he wants to do something, and he does things with the panel layout themselves, like the panel doesn't always have a rigid, rectangle shape. Sometimes it's like a whole corner or a whole bottom where it bleeds into other panels. I'm totally cool with that. I think it looks great. Yeah.
So let me ask you another question then, because oftentimes we're just talking about the writer and the artist. Obviously, it's a visual medium.
Sure.
And there's liberties that are taken to, enhance the story. Is there consideration when it comes to the letterer as well? Does the letterer have input in regards to how much content you've given them to lay on the page?
Oh, yeah.
According to the layout they have?
Oh, yeah. So he'll do the pages. And if he feels like there's too much text, or there's too much text so that it would cover up something, he'll say, hey, try and, like, we have maybe 5 caption bubbles in here. Try to whittle that down to 3 or 4. And so I'll go with my editor and we'll sit down and we'll be like, okay, how do we tell the exact same thing? We're not losing any information, but we're doing it in only 4 bubbles instead of 5, that sort of a thing. He's done that plenty of times. The first book, especially, because I really didn't know what I was doing in the first book. And so I had too many panels per page. I had too many captions per panel. Like, everything was too much. I was doing a show. I don't remember when it was. It was like 2 years ago. And you guys will probably make fun of me for this, but I told you I'm bad with names and I don't know anybody. So I sit down for the show, and the guy next to me, it's an elder gentleman. And he comes over and he shakes my hand. He's like, hey, how you doing? I'm Christopher Priest. And I said, oh, I'm Dennis Robbins. How you doing? And he's like, you don't know who I am, do you? I said, not a clue. And he goes, okay, well, let me read you my entire resume. I was like, I feel like I should know who you are. Yeah, it's fine. He actually liked it because I didn't know who he was. So we just ended up chit-chatting the whole weekend. But
nice.
He bought my first book, and he was like, okay, you literally committed the cardinal sin that everybody who writes their first book does. Too much text on the pages. It doesn't need this much. And that was for a few different reasons. And that first book, while I love that book, if I were to redo the book, it would be more than 72 pages, because the original editor that I had, when the book was first written, it was 60 pages of story, similar to what it is now. And he said, nah, we can't do 60 pages for your first book. We got to cut it down to 24. So we're going to take your 60-page book and make it a 24-page book. And I said, that's not possible. There's no way you could do that. He's like, oh, yeah, no, it's cool. We could do it. And he wrote me a layout. And I was like, or an outline, I should say. I was like, you literally have people appearing and dying on the same page. Like, no one's going to care about any of these characters. It's like, what if a compromise, we cut the book into 2 24-page books and go from there? And so it was put together, chopped up, and then it was written, and then the artist was like, you have too many panels, so you have to add more pages. So then things got stretched out and moved around, and then it was like, oh, there's too many captions, more panels. Okay, stretched out, moved around. So 24 became 26, became 28, became 30, and then same thing for the second half of the book. And then it got stitched back together because of COVID. So then it ended up being put back together in the end anyways. So it is kind of a weird sort of, it's not disjointed, but it doesn't flow quite as smoothly as the other books. And the other books don't have nearly as many captions per panel and page and things like that, because those were, I'm writing it from start to finish the way I want to write it from start to finish. This is a story that I want to tell. However many pages it takes to do that, that's what we're doing. So
yeah, and it's funny because with this particular medium, there are a foundation of rules,
yes,
but they can be bent so much that it looks not broken, but just completely, like we talk about Scott Snyder all the time. Whenever he has, not Zach, Scott. Whenever he has a new book coming out, you want to talk about wordy, like there's just so, especially when you're trying to create a world that no one has ever seen before. I mean, if you've read Reborn, that first issue was so wordy, and that's him. That's how he is. Another person was that
Watchmen's crazy wordy.
Yeah, this is a different time as well, but
sure.
Even recently, who did we read? Simon Kudansky, No Man's Land.
No Man's Land.
It was really wordy, but I think it added to the context of what he had drawn.
Sure.
So I think if you're not repeating what the page is actually already doing visually, then you're in a good place. I think if there's more words on the page and you can see pictures, there's definitely a problem.
Sure.
There's definitely
and that's what my first editor taught me too, was the point of the captions are to give the reader the information that the images are not. It's the internal workings, it's the relationships and stuff like that. The panels are supposed to give the reader, like a good book could technically go without any captions whatsoever, and the reader would be able to have a rough idea what's going on. The words just enhance it. And so I try to do that, where it's like, okay, we're going to put as much information in the panels themselves to give an idea of exactly what's going on, and then I'm going to juice it up by adding captions, to give that insight that you wouldn't normally get.
I mean, captions are huge for like time and place. Internal dialogue that a character may be struggling with, and then the actual dialogue between characters is what's pushing that story along. But all the action stuff and everything like that, I mean, emotion, that can all be drawn. And if we're constantly just reiterating what's happening on the page, then there's you're too much on the intellect side rather than more of the visual side or the art side of it.
Well, it's also, and you kind of hit the nail on the head. It's that narrative technique where you sort of front load with the exposition because you are introducing your reader to these worlds. So Reborn, Watchmen, they're very text heavy at the beginning, but by the time you funnel through and motor towards that climax, it is less and less dialogue, less and less caption, and that is your action beat. That is your big blowout towards the end. So I mean, done as a narrative technique, and especially I think with what you're doing, Dennis, you kind of need to front load it with that exposition so that people know this world that they're getting into, and that it is semi-historical or historical backdrop, very mythology fueled, but you're also getting to know this character. And you're following this character on this journey. And as you get, further along that journey, you are further, this guy more and more and more. So the need for heavy dialogue, heavy captions will be, by the time he's fighting in the Gettysburg War, because I know that's where you're going.
It is going to happen. There's no way I can't not. You can't. No. In the Civil War,
the ghosts of Gettysburg will make you. And so by the time you're there, and again, to use an example that Angel hates, but it is such a great example, Highlander. Some of the stuff you loved most about Highlander were those flashbacks. So we got to see little more bits of him, throughout history. But where you just, and even in that movie, you have a character who doesn't even speak much because who he is essentially by the time you get to that point.
Because he's not Scottish. He's French.
Learned everything phonetically.
All right, cool. There was something on my head that I had, and you just ruined it for me, John.
Sorry, man.
But okay, so we got process. All right. So the other thing, because we've been talking about storytelling a lot, and it's really cool because I had forgotten about this, but for me, it's mind blowing because John and I love comics. John is around comics every single day, I read them every single day. Even supporting Kickstarters, I purchase Kickstarters so that I can just get content. I mean, I got to the point where I had so many freaking small boxes of comics that I had to get rid of some and just keep the ones that I really, really like. But you don't have that much of a comic book background, right? You read comics now?
Yeah. So I have a buddy. He used to do a comic podcast. Actually, this was a number of years ago, and he has a pretty good gauge on what I would like. So he would recommend comics to me. Like I was reading Realm for a while until it stopped making any sense, and then I kind of fell off of that one. Die, like DICE, like that. It's great series, love it.
It's all D&D stuff.
Yep, and then also Philip Kennedy Johnson's Last God, loved that. Especially since one of the books has like, oh, if you want to play these as D&D monsters, here's the stats for them and whatnot. And my other friend Shannon that I talked about before, she'll just give me werewolf comics, and I'll read through those, and those are neat because they're always different. They're they're never the same. Like they looked at, like the style of the werewolves is totally different. The story that they're going for is totally different. So I always enjoy reading those as well. When I was growing up, I used to, back when grocery stores used to have comic books sitting in the magazine section, which I don't even know if grocery stores still have a magazine section, to be honest with you. I used to sneak off from where my mom was, and I would just go over and flip through the comics. I'd read Wolverine comics and Incredible Hulk comics and stuff like that. But I wasn't ever really allowed to have comics like at the house. Like my parents didn't really see the point in it. So I didn't have too many growing up. So I would say I definitely read more now than I did before. And then when I'm doing the Kickstarter, one of the things that I'll do is I will do cross promotion. So I'll look up if there are other comic book Kickstarters going at the same time. And I'll say, hey, I'll reach out and be like, hey, you know, if you want to give me a shout out during one of your updates, I'll give you a shout out during one of my updates, and we'll sort of cross promote that way. And that also ties into one of the things that I've learned, which is don't expect other people to do the same amount of work that you're going to do, because I'll go through a person's Kickstarter and I'll read that whole thing and I'll write a summation and I'll give my input and my my thoughts and all this stuff. And I'll put that in the update. It'll be a long thing. I'll pull images out and all this. They will not do that. They'll just some of them will just copy the first sentence at the top of the Kickstarter, the first image, and plop it up there. And one person that I promoted or did cross promotion with had a press packet, so that she's like, here, this is the text that I want you to put in your update. Here are the images I want you to put in the update, and just do it for you. And I was like, that's a great idea. I'm going to do that for the next time. But when I'm doing that, usually when I'm doing cross promotion, I'll back those Kickstarters. And if it's something that it's not like a project that I'm particularly interested in, I'll just back it like digitally to just help out. And if it's something that I do dig, I will back it physically. And then when the books do arrive, though most of the time I'll forget that I even did it it's like a surprise when they show up in the mail, because you never know. Sometimes they show up in like a couple months, sometimes it's a couple years, you never know. And then I'll read those books because usually they're pretty different. And there was a werewolf comic going the same time that I was doing mine. It was about Native American werewolves, so that was pretty cool. So yeah, so I don't have a big comic background. I love comic book movies, comic book TV shows, watch those as well. But I didn't like grow up like reading comics like fervently.
Right. No, yeah. And you don't need to. I mean, it's good if you have just a love for the medium itself. But there was something really interesting that you said, because I find myself every time I'm reading a new story, because John and I review books every week. And some of these books we end up, following for a very long time, especially if we're drawn into the story and there's just something about it that just has to keep coming back. More often than not, I find myself just stopping after one issue. Some read better as a trade, or there's just no interest there. And what you said is that you were following a certain book, Realm, and fell off of it because you lost interest. And for me, those are the books that I pay attention to the most. Only because there's a lesson to be learned from why did I lose interest, and was it the writing, is it the art, is it the story that I'm no longer interested in? And so for you,
for that one, I couldn't follow the story at one point. I was like, did I miss a book?
Yeah.
Like, how did they get to where they are right now? why are the things happening? And I had to literally double check the numbers. I was like, did I miss a book?
Right.
And no, I didn't. I just have no idea how they got from, this issue to that issue. I was like, I don't know what I couldn't follow it. And I was confused, and the characters were starting to do weird things that didn't make any sense. So I was like,
Yeah. So now, do you take that into consideration because your books are coming out yearly, correct?
Yeah. Well, so because the books are getting longer, they're not coming out yearly so much now. They're coming out like every year and a half.
Okay.
It didn't help that. So production on the fourth book got delayed by about 6 months because my artist, who's the second person on my team, ended up getting work on Conan the Barbarian because of the stuff that they did on Lycan. So understandably, my project got pushed from October to March. And I was like, I get it. I don't blame you. It's fine.
Yeah. So then taking that into consideration, is that part of, so we were talking about this a couple episodes back, John and I, and like the whole, like the way that 80s comics were written. So if we take, for instance, like Wolverine, and every single issue, it didn't matter if it was issue 1 or issue 159, there would always be dialogue of Wolverine talking to himself, saying, I'm the baddest at whatever I do. I got my adamantium skeleton, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
Something about my healing factor. If somebody picks up issue,
not very nice.
Yes, exactly. If somebody picks up issue 3, are they able to figure out what preceded that book, or is it something where they have to read it in order? Is that anything that you think about, or like moving forward, or did you think about that from the very beginning?
So
just because now we read comics,
sure.
And a lot of the comics that we read now that are mainstream, they'll have like sort of like that recap blur in the beginning,
sure,
of what happened in the previous issue, where they are up to the story. It's not so much 80s style where it's like the Thing repeating the entire,
sure.
50 issues preceding it. And I think it's especially with as much content as they're out there, and if it's not coming out as frequent, is that part of your thought process is where I'm getting at?
So I've had people ask something similar in terms of, can I just pick up number 3 and not worry about the first 2? And I'm like, yes, technically each chapter is its own little contained, it's part of Solomon's Odyssey. So like that is an encapsulated story. Like this is one of the pieces of Solomon's journey. You can get the gist from reading that book, but you won't know all the details. Like I don't do a recap. The second book does a bit more, not of recapping, but giving you a pretty good idea of what happened in the first book, just because of the events that occur in the second book. It deals a lot with PTSD and stress and stuff like that because of the events that happened at the end of the first book. The third book, though, that one takes place a good bit after the second book. So we don't really do the recap. It's something that I have thought about, but one of the other things that I have to worry about is cost, because I am indie. So I'm like, okay, well, that might be a deterrent for some people because they might not want to buy the whole series, or they're not going to remember the whole series. But in terms of, I'm trying to get the most out of every page that I have at my disposal, I don't put a recap in there. But like I said, you could probably also just enjoy each chapter by itself as its own self-contained story.
Right.
So yeah, so it's kind of one of those things. I've thought about it, but I haven't really ever pulled the trigger on that one. Maybe at the end of, like I said, there was going to be 3 5-chapter arcs.
Right.
Maybe at the beginning of the second arc, I would do like a small like intro to like, hey, this is what happened in the last arc, if you haven't read this one. But it just depends. So I haven't done that yet.
Okay.
I think the storytelling structure, the format that you're going for, does lend itself for people to sort of wander in, or oh, I like werewolves and I happen to like this period of history, or so I'm going to check out this book 5 of this thing, and then if I like it, I'm going to keep going. I can backfill. I think, again, I always like to say, like, thanks to George Lucas and Quentin Tarantino, we're a lot more used to nonlinear narrative these days. As a retailer at a comic shop, the biggest hurdle I always have is somebody who comes in and says, I want to read all of Marvel from the very beginning in order. And it's like, you got to let go of that, because that way lies madness, you know? So these are designed for you to just sort of wander in, as a medium in and of itself too. And I think
I've had people buy the third one and then read that and be like, okay, well, now I need to know what happened in the first two, and then they'll buy the first two and go back.
Because they like the character, they like the story, like the art, they like what's going on, and it does, set that fire to kind of go back and keep going with this thing. And again, if they're meeting you in person, I think that they're going to like you as well, and they're going to want to support you either way, right? But yeah, so that sort of idea that you can just kind of stumble in on it. Again, Conan, great example. Conan was never written chronologically. The stories have not been put out chronologically. They have there have been attempts and things like that, but it's just, you love that character and you just want to see that character doing something and some period in his life, like Indiana Jones, so I think that storytelling format and structure you're going for, I think it's a great way to do that for what you want to do.
But I also think there's a big difference between a monthly periodical and something that comes out a year and a half later. In that respect. So there's things that we need to think about in those respects, because you want to have sort of like that refresher for somebody who's been reading it, and it doesn't need to happen for the person that hasn't read it, who's picking it up for the first time. But they would get the benefit of that refresher in that instance. So it's just me thinking from the creative side.
No, it's definitely, as John said, there's multiple ways to do it. You can do the weekly recap like it's a TV show sort of thing, especially since it's not coming out very frequently. Or you could have it where it's each adventure is technically a continuance from the last story, but it's also a self-contained story that moves this character along on his journey, kind of a thing.
Yeah, look, at 100 page a pop about every year, you're getting your money's worth. You're getting a full story per issue. So.
You're getting your periodical all in one shot. That's cool. All right, great. So let's just remind everybody. So just put this graphic up here. So where can they go to get information on? Because you have the pre-launch page, correct?
Yes. So the pre-launch page is the same link as when it goes live, which will be lycanbook.com. And if we do get 200 people signed up for the pre-launch page, then everybody will get a sticker of the cover of Maria Wolf's art, as well as like a little bonus thank you before everything goes live. But yeah, lycanbook.com, LYCAN book.com, and that's the easiest way to sign up now, or when it goes live, you can check it out. And then Kickstarter actually added a new feature called late pledges, so you can actually pledge after a campaign is over, only if it's successful. So that is something I'll be playing around with this time around, because they instituted that 1 week after my last Kickstarter ended.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I was doing my own version of it, where basically on the Kickstarter page there was a button and it would redirect you to a Google Doc, like a fillable form where you could say, hey, I want this reward tier, I want these add-ons, that sort of a thing. And then I would message the person after the form comes through, and we would like figure out, payment through PayPal or, whatever it was, and just go through it that way. Now, I guess I don't have to do that because PayPal or Kickstarter will do it for me.
Nice. Okay. So I'm assuming, and let me not assume, but you're going to have the other issues available as well as part of a tier that they can, if they wanted to purchase.
Yep. I always do a catch-up tier where it's all of the books, including the previous ones. I do a catch-up tier digitally and physically. And the physical one will also have like a little extra art card as like a little bonus as well. Sweet. But yeah, I always do. It's called like new to Lycan catch-up or something like that. And then I do retail tiers where it's the first tier, I think, is 5 books of each of the chapters, plus a 11x17 poster of the main cover or one of the covers with the store logo on it. And then they get the store gets their name in the book on the thank you page. Nice. So there's lots of different, and they get bookmarks and art cards and stuff like that too, which are just free. None of that's, priced into it or anything like that. It's just literally 50% of whatever the books cost.
Right. All right. So chapter 15 happens in less than 15 years from now.
Well, not if it's a year and a half.
Yes. Well, yes. So is there plans for more stories that are not Lycan, or is it 15 and you're done? I just need to know for my own sanity.
Sure. So I don't have any more stories necessarily planned out for Lycan anyways.
Okay.
I did have randomly recently, I did have another werewolf story, but it would literally just be a 24-page one-off. Like it wouldn't even be anything else. I just thought it would be fun. There are 2 other stories that I came up with that I think would make for good comics. But at this point, I'm in the mode of, until this gets to a point where I'm breaking even enough that I don't put myself in the poorhouse.
Right.
I'm not going to start those other series just yet. One is a fantasy series, and very much like a D&D feel sort of thing. And then the other series is like a sci-fi sort of mech kind of adventure sort of thing.
Nice. All right.
Well,
And then,
I would say, aside from the obvious Lycan Project Shadowbreed crossover that should happen in the near future, Dennis, I think this journey that you are on to get this comic done in and of itself could also be a very fascinating comic someday.
Oh, thank you. Oh, and I almost forgot. So, kind of tying into me burning the candle every which way. So I had a little bit of like a mental, breakdown a few years ago. It was just, I was too stressed out. There was too many things going on. I started going to therapy for the first time ever. And the therapist used, I forget what the term was, but basically they have you go inside your own mind and you visualize things. And the therapist is like, wow, you're really good at like this whole visualizing thing. I was like, yeah, it's kind of like what I do. So I thought it might be interesting to do a comic of that, in like that visualization journey of like that, going through therapy. I thought that might be like a fun, like 24-page book or, something like that too. So.
Yeah, one shot is the way to go after this long haul. So
yes,
that much.
But you know what?
Shorter books.
You're only almost a third of the way done.
I
like that. That's a positive spin on it. So, all right, before we end this, I know that we aren't going to go 3 hours. We're almost there. Have you because you've done a ton of shows, and for me, it's like networking, and you talk to a bunch of other creative people. Have you been in any discussions, or have there been any discussions with like possibly doing a project with someone, collaborating on something? Have you had discussions like that were sort of like enticing, but no, they're not realistic right now?
So I've had people reach out to ask if I would be willing to write like a short story for their anthology comic or their anthology books. And my response is usually, I don't have any time to do anything new. Like I already don't have time for all my stuff. Like my friend that is going to be writing the novelization version of Lycan, he asked me to do a short story for his series. And I was like, I don't have any time. I don't know how I'm going to do this. There's another book that I wanted to write. I wanted to write a book about my dad, and I haven't gotten around to doing that yet either. So it's just like, there's always, and then me adding, the paintings on top of everything else. It's like, okay, well now I have even less time. It's like, okay, well when I have free time, it's like, oh, now we can paint or whatever. So
no, I think it's important to have that. Yeah, I think it's important to have that discipline as well, because it's cool to get asked, but if you stretch yourself so thin and you sacrifice your main project, then that sacrifice is just not worth it.
And I've gotten a little burned on that in the past too. So I had somebody reach out. This was before I got crazy busy. They were doing a anthology of how people got into podcasting. And the story of how we got into how we started our podcast is pretty ridiculous and unique anyways. So I told them that story. They're like, perfect, write that down. So they gave me a word limit or a word goal, or I forget exactly what it was. And I wrote it out and gave it to them. And the deal was that once the book came out, we were going to be able to purchase copies at like a retailer cost and all this other stuff. And they just ghosted me as soon as I gave them the files. So it was like, okay, well, I gave them free content for nothing essentially.
Yep. And it's funny because I have a similar story, but I'll go one step further. Right. So first, like Kickstarter that I was doing, it was my own story. I had multiple covers that were being done. And I had somebody approach me saying, hey, listen, I'd like to be able to do a cover for you. And I said, listen, I appreciate it, but my budget's already done, blah, blah. He said, no, I want to do a cover for you for free. So I took a look at his stuff and I thought it was pretty cool. That should have been the first red flag. No one does anything for free.
No.
So he said, all I need is just, give me the character and stuff like that. And because it was just going to be a cover. But then he was asking for like the bio and additional information on the character and stuff like that. And sort of my eyebrow kind of just like went up. I said, you don't really need it. Here's just the color and the sketch and blah, blah, blah. He said, okay, cool. Never heard from him again.
Yeah.
Never heard from him again. However, because he does conventions and I knew who he was, I saw him at a convention.
Okay.
And he would not eyeball me at all.
Interesting.
Fucking asshole.
So my first year doing conventions, I did this. Now, if you're talking about wasted times, let me tell you, this show had more vendors than it did attendees. But
oh my goodness,
the little old Chechnyan woman that I stayed with for the Airbnb was delightful, and I had a great time talking to her. So from that standpoint, super worth it. But anyways, the guy next to me, he was a sci-fi writer, super nice guy, and he was talking about how it's tough. He used to work in a nuclear power plant and he's retired, and he would write these books while he was at work, and he's been selling these books for a while, but he doesn't really make a ton of money. And then finally he had his big break, and he said, and this was my first clue that something was off. He said a literary agent reached out to him about the reason his books haven't kicked off yet is that he needs to have book insurance, and then he'll get picked up by not a publisher, but a distributor. And so he paid, I think it was $2,000 for book insurance. He had to get a credit card because he didn't have any money. So he paid for it. And then sure enough, as soon as he got that book insurance, he got a phone call saying that they wanted to buy 10,000 copies of his book and, sell it at, I forget what, big brand name store it was. And he was like, oh, great. And, they got that scheduled out, and they said, but, we need to redo your covers. So we're going to have someone do that, yada, yada, yada. And then he got another phone call, this time from the New York bestsellers, because that store had bought so many copies that qualified him, which is not how this works, for the New York bestsellers list. But you have to pay for the advertising, which just so happened to be like $3,000. So he paid that. And I said, have you ever gotten a check? And he's like, well, according to my literary agent, it's in the mail. It's going to be coming soon. I really need that money. I was like, oh boy. And so he's like, hey, I'd like to put you in touch with my agent. I was like, oh, I don't know. He's like, oh, it's cool. And so he took a picture of the book, the cover, and then he took my card. And he said, she'll reach out to you on Monday. She's in California. I said, okay. And Monday rolled around, and I got a phone call at like 9 or 10 in the morning, which is already a red flag because ain't nobody in California working at 7 in the morning at a literary agency. And this had just happened on Sunday. And she's like, hey, she has a heavy accent. I hear lots of voices in the background. I know this is a call center, and like this is a scam. Like, this is just a scam. Everything about it says scam. But color me curious. Let me just hear this lady out because I'm too curious. And like, I have a notepad because she says what her name is. I write the name out because I'm Googling her name while she's, saying this and that. And then what's the company? Write that down. Google the company while she's talking. And she's like, oh, I saw your book. I love it. I already have talked to a publisher. They want to jump on this right now. I was like, he just sent you a picture of the cover. You don't know. Is it? I said, what kind of book is it? She goes, oh, book. I was like, uh-huh. I'm like, you don't even know it's a comic book? She goes, oh, no, yeah, I know it's a comic book. I said, okay. And they're like, but in order for the publisher to pick it up, we need to get book insurance, which is $2,000. And I was like, uh-huh. And we need to do it right now, though. And I said, well, it's the end of the year. Times are tough. So I'll give you a call back later. And she's like, well, maybe we could, sparse the payments out over a few weeks, like $500 a week for this. I was like, I think I'll just give you a call back later. And she was fighting tooth and nail to like get a payment like that in there. Got off the phone. I looked it up. So the lady doesn't exist on LinkedIn or anything like that. And the company name, if you Google it, it's just like, this is a scam. This is a scam. This is a scam. And so that guy, I emailed the guy. I was like, hey, man, I'm pretty sure you've been getting scammed by this lady. Like, everything about this is a scam. Here's a link to the articles. He never responded. He never talked to me. But as soon as I sent that email, I got a call 5 minutes later from that lady trying to get a hold of me again. I was like, yep, blocking that number.
Oh my God.
They're always like, there's always somebody looking to get one over on you, especially if you're an indie. And because like literally the tagline on this website was helping writers achieve their dreams. And it's like, that's so scummy that, you know, these, when you're an indie person, you know, you're not making a lot of money. You're putting your heart and soul into these things. And you finally see like a light at the end of the tunnel. It's like, oh, there's my big break. And it's just somebody there with a crowbar to hit you in the knees.
Yeah. And it's one thing for like these scam companies to do it, but I think it's worse when it's one of your brethren. So if you got somebody who's an actual creator and they know the struggle that you're going through, and they go ahead and they take advantage of you. They take your property and they just ghost you. So there could be a fucking character out there that I created that somebody's using that I won't know until I'm like 90 years old and I open up a comment and I'm like, yo, that's my fucking character.
And that's part of what I worry about with the whole AI thing, because, you know, AI is literally it just takes stuff and lumps it together. And I got one of I hate AI, but I have one of our patrons, and he constantly sends me AI garbage. And I'm like, I don't know how many times I have to tell you I hate this before you stop sending this, but he'll send me comics that he's made in AI. And I'm like, how long until someone just takes this IP? And like, even though I have a copyright or whatever, it doesn't matter. Like, that doesn't seem to stop anything. So I don't know. And
I mean, we're still at the infancy. It's still at its infancy, and you can tell a lot of the AR now and stuff like that. And I mean, it's just gonna. But obviously, it's gonna get better, and it's gonna get better exponentially. I just don't. It's one of those things where, and I try to compare it to us, right? So it can only take the information that's available out there, and create something out of it. So it's an amalgamation of whatever content it can find. And so we tend to think of ourselves as deeper beings that have an imagination that can create things out of nothing. But ultimately we're not, because everything that we're thinking about is stimulated by what we're going through in our experiences. So whatever we're hearing, whatever we're seeing, whatever we're feeling, whether it's subconscious or not, it's being taken into our being. And so when we come up with an idea, it's not coming out of nowhere. It's coming out of our subconscious and these experiences that we have. So how is that any different than what AI is doing in that respect? So for me, there's that fine line of, I have a soul. I can rationally think. I can reason. But everything that I'm creating is based off of something that I've either experienced consciously or subconsciously.
That makes sense.
And so AI is created, and it's creating based off of the information that it has at hand. In that respect, I'm not advocating for it. I freaking hate AI as well. But
that whole thing you said makes total sense. Still hate it.
Absolutely. I just don't think it's ever going to get to a place
where I work. They push AI so hard, it drives me nuts. And like, I do a lot of voiceover work, even though it's corporate. You know, I still like doing voiceover work. But ever since like companies have been pushing AI, they just love that AI garbage text to speech stuff. And I'm like, it doesn't sound good. Like,
sound right. It doesn't sound
like, oh no, it sounds great. I'm like, it doesn't.
Yeah, but you can push it further, right? You can push the argument further, and just AI will create based off of the information that it has at hand. Where a human will do the same thing, but the big difference here is I will torture the shit out of myself until I think that it's perfect. Where AI doesn't give a fuck. It just produces and then it's done.
Trims it out. Yep.
Yeah. So
and you guys will feel my pain on this one. At work, we have like a little profile, and it'll list out your skills. So then somebody in the company can like, oh, I need help with this or that. Let me search for that. Oh, this person knows how to do it. I'll reach out to them. So obviously I've got podcasting stuff up on my profile, and I had these two individuals reach out and they're like, hey, we're looking to do a podcast and we want to pick your brain. I was like, absolutely. Always happy to talk podcasting or voice acting, whatever. Love talking about it. They were doing an AI podcast. And when I say AI podcast, the AI wrote the script and recorded the audio. So at no point is a person involved other than to edit the audio so that it, has like an intro, outro, and, whatever. And I was like, why? Who's going to listen to this garbage? Who? And they're like, it sounds really realistic. It's got breaths and ums and all that stuff. I said, do you know what we do? We cut that out because it's not professional. But you know who else does breaths and ums? People.
I use AI to cut out the ums and ahs.
Yeah.
Yeah, if I were in charge, I would just relegate that AI slop to just fake videos of Freddie Mercury and David Bowie in the wrestling ring. I love those. Those are great. I have no use for.
Oh man, yeah, just for the entertainment portion of it. All right, cool. So listen, Dennis, this has been fantastic. I want to give you one more opportunity just to give your spiel on what you got going on and where people can actually go. Shoot.
Sure. So you can find all my stuff, Linktree, Hivehead Studios, or hiveheadstudios.com. I do have a Patreon where it's the only tier, really. I think it's $3 a month. It's just a mostly weekly podcast where it's myself and my one friend, and we just talk inside baseball as far as the Lycan series goes and go into shows and all my weird experiences, namely the weird bathrooms I end up finding myself in when going to shows. And let me tell you, I've seen some doozies. But also I'm doing, if you want to check out the books, you can actually check out the first 18 pages of book one for free digitally on the website, hiveheadstudios.com. I'm doing the Kickstarter. It's hopefully launching November 1st. That's for Lycan Solomon's Odyssey Chapter 4, and that one is set in ancient Egypt. So as is shown on the screen, we have the god Sobek, which is like a crocodile god. So this one has almost lycanthropic-esque features as far as the gods go and all that stuff. So I had a lot of fun playing around in this sandbox. And one of my friends, Shannon, who I've mentioned previously, this is her favorite chapter of the 5 that I wrote. So I'm really excited to share it with everybody, and check it out at lycanbook.com.
Awesome. Dennis, listen, it's been absolutely fantastic. I wish you nothing but the best. As soon as it goes live, you absolutely know that we're going to be backing you, brother.
Thank you so much. Thanks for having me. I love talking to you guys.
It's great having you back, man.
Absolutely. And after it launches and stuff like that, we'll definitely have to have you back on so we can chat some more.
Sounds good.
A year and a half from now when the next chapter.
I know, right?
That'd be fantastic.
Well, next year. So like I said, I'm trying to do a Kickstarter every year, but because this book's probably not going to be done till mid next year, I was like, well, I can't do a Kickstarter for book 5 before the book has even like started yet, because then they're going to be waiting a year and a half. So next year I'm going to do a Kickstarter for a coffee table art book of my nerdy little landscape paintings.
Oh, nice. Oh, definitely want to check that out. That'd be awesome. And why not? All right, gang. So yeah, definitely check it out. Go to lycanbook.com. That'll send you to the pre-launch page for Dennis's Kickstarter. It's really good stuff. The art's really, really great. Stories just superb. You want to definitely check it out. Cool. If you guys like what you heard, just subscribe to the podcast. We'd love to, have more of you listening on in. If you want to be part of the podcast, like Dennis was for our Indie Creator Spotlight, just go to indiecreatorcomics.com, fill out the form. John and I would love to have you on so that we can talk shop. As always, support your local comic book shops, because without them, we would not be able to get our hands on the material that we love to read every week. All right, kiddies. So until next time, please read Indie Made and support